Good morning and welcome again. This is Sunrise Daily, bang in the middle of the week. I'm Ayo Makinde. Straight to papers we would like to go this morning because we have quite a packed day for you. But what paper comes next? Let's open it up. The first we're looking at this morning is New Telegraph, and this is its lead. The Electoral Act, of course. Almost all papers, I would assume, would be leading with that angle this morning. Tension mounts as senators move to override Buhari's veto. That's what you have on its lead. Says it's battle for political survival. We've collected over 73 signatures. That's ascribed to Senator Sikibo. We'll take decision in 2022, Mila says. Override Buhari's decision on remove direct primaries. That's ascribed to CSOs. The story is on pages 3 and 5 of the New Telegraph newspaper this morning. And so much to say on that this morning. Just stick with us on Sunrise Daily this morning. We're delving right into it. Right beneath its picture on its front page of the president taking a booster jab, reps passed 17.12 trillion naira 2022 budget. The story you'll find on pages 4 and 27 of New Telegraph this morning. Extends 2021 financial plan to March 2022. Raise oil benchmark to $62 per barrel. EFCC, NFIU to utilize 10% of recoveries. Buhari seeks Senate's approval of 276.8 billion naira environment fund. Buhari seeks Senate's approval for 276.8 billion naira environment to fund 2021 budget. What does that mean? All of that's packed on pages 4 and 27 of the New Telegraph this morning. Right above the nameplate, internet affordability, Nigeria ranks 19th globally, emerges 3rd in Africa. All of that you'll find on the front page, continues on page 4. You wonder which countries are first and second in Africa? The details are on the inside pages. And right under the nameplate, unresolved crimes only lead to culture of impunity. That's ascribed to Professor Shoyinka. All of that on the front page of New Telegraph this morning. Next to that, you'll find technology used in elections has come to stay. That's ascribed to INEC. Releases schedules for Ogun, Osun, Guba primaries. All of that you'll find on the inside pages of the New Telegraph this morning. And right beside the picture, Nigeria UAE ends spat as NCAA restores Emirates flight. Airpeace granted daily frequencies to Dubai. What does that mean? Again, as I say, all of the details you find on the inside pages of the paper this morning. Flip to Daily Trust newspaper, and what does it have on its front page? Senators collect signatures to override Buhari. That's right there on the front page of the paper. Say direct primaries or no budget passage. Is the die cast? We must reform our electoral system. Ascribed to Mila. Fire backs president as governors reach out to legislators. We're disappointed, as ascribed to Rafsanjani. And right under the nameplate, Senate reps pass finance bill. The details you find on the inside pages. Under that picture you see on the front page, El Rufai meets Buhari, says bandits must be killed. Well, all of that detail you'll find on the inside pages of the paper this morning. And what do we have on the front page of Nigerian News Direct? This is what you have there. Electoral Amendment Bill. 73 senators signed to veto Buhari's rejection. All of that you'll find on page 2. declares rejection fallacious. Buhari should be commended for standing with Nigerians. Well, the details of that, again, you will find on the front page of the Nigerian News Direct this morning, and several other stories all grappling for your attention. Nigeria needs 6 trillion naira to meet demands on water infrastructure. The details on the inside pages. Check out what you have on the front page of Daily Independent this morning. Buhari under fire for not assenting to electoral bill. Well, it's quite packed, as you would expect. The riders, Ozekome, Ogunye, CUPP, NCF urge National Assembly to override his veto. Sheikh Sage wants direct primaries clause removed. Bill sent back to Buhari. Intrigues as Senate shuts out open debate on Electoral Act. Really? Okay, the details on the inside pages. Governor Fayemi says Buhari's courage should be commended. Find the story, the details of it, on page 6 of the paper this morning. And on the front page, again, right under the picture on the front page, Reps passed 2022 budget, increase appropriation by 800.26 billion naira, extend 2021 capital components to June 2022, approve further tax increment in new finance bill. Yes, you heard right. Approve further tax increment in new finance bill. The details on the inside pages of the paper today. And there's a sad story on right under the picture, right under the second picture on the front page, under the paper, how I killed ex-Governor Igbenedion's mother. Why is that a thing? Find the details on the inside pages. Above the nameplate, Electoral Act Amendment Bill, Reps will deliver credible, enduring electoral system. That's ascribed to Gbajabiamila. And then you also have this one, the only repentant bandit is a dead one. Who said that? Yes, you've seen it. It's on the front page. Governor El-Rufai. The details you find on the front page continues on the inside pages of the paper this morning. Several other stories. FG secures $700 million World Bank loan to tackle poor water supply. Buhari seeks environment of 276.8 billion naira to fund 2021 budget expenses. PSC promotes 2 AIGs, 6 CPs, 17 DCPs, and 24 ACPs. Others, that's on page 4, and several other stories on the inside pages that will not make it to the front page of the paper today. Well, I guess we can leave it there for the papers this morning, and right after this break, it's time to plunge into the issues for the day. Just stay with us.
President Buhari's letter responding to the Electoral Act Amendment Bill is finally before federal lawmakers in both chambers of the National Assembly on Tuesday. The 30-day deadline for President Buhari to communicate to the National Assembly on his decision to either sign or decline assent on the Electoral Act Amendment Bill expired on Sunday, December the 19th. In the Senate, lawmakers converge in groups. They already knew the content of a letter. Senate President Ahmad Lawan gets down to business and reads the communication to his colleagues, disclosing President Buhari's decision refusing to sign the Electoral Act Amendment Bill into law and the reasons given.
The conduct of direct primaries across the 8,809 wards across the length and breadth of the country will lead to a significant spike in the cost of conducting primary elections by parties, as well as increase in the cost of monitoring such elections by INEC. In addition to increased costs identified above, conducting and monitoring primary elections across 809 wards will pose huge security challenges, as the security agencies will also be overstretched, and such large turnout without effective security coordination will also engender intimidation and disruptions, thereby raising credibility issues for the outcomes of such elections.
Done with reading the correspondence from the president, the Senate proceeds to other matters. But a federal legislator draws his colleagues back to President Buhari's letter.
Mr. President, it's my opinion that the Senate dissolve into a closed session and discuss on it so that we can take appropriate decision on it.
A closed-door session commences. More than 30 minutes later, proceedings are open to the public. Lawmakers are seen still holding intimate discussions in groups and writing on a piece of paper. Sources say these are signatures from legislators showing the intention to override President Buhari's veto on the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. However, the Senate President makes no mention of what transpired during the executive session and adjourns plenary till the following day, going against the upper chamber's earlier plan of proceeding on its end-of-year holiday on Tuesday. In the House of Representatives, the Speaker also reads the letter from President Buhari declining assent to the Electoral Act Amendment Bill.
As it is now, that bill has not received presidential assent, and it falls to Parliament to decide the best way forward.
As plenary progresses, a member raises a matter of privilege, urging the Speaker to guide the House on how to respond to President Buhari's letter.
The word now in the streets is that this is a do-nothing house. You've read the President's correspondence. We need to have a direction.
The minority leader also raises a matter of privilege to immediately address the matter.
So, Mr. Speaker, I'm begging this House that we can suspend our rules and immediately look at that clause that talks about direct primaries.
The House of Representatives proceeds on its end-of-year holiday, and whatever response it intends to make as regards President Buhari's decision on the Electoral Act Amendment Bill will be clearer when it resumes in January 2022. Linda Akibi, Channels Television News.
It seems, well, the political class, maybe here and there, depending on which side of the divide you choose. The legal, judicial, well, the judicial segment, also maybe depending on which side of the divide you are, but the ones whose voices we've heard have said, no. The CSOs definitely want it signed immediately. Well, the president has spoken. What is his spokesman got to say? Well, that conversation will happen in Abuja. Markwe, good morning.
Good morning, Ayo. Indeed, we're joined here by Mr. Femi Adesina, who's Special Advisor to the President on Media and Publicity. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
Well, you did say the last time you were here that there was no need to hurry, that whatever was hidden will certainly come to light, and that a pregnant woman doesn't have room to hide. So we've seen finally what has been delivered of this pregnant woman, and it looks like it hasn't gone down well with, you know, a host of people. First and foremost, they wonder why it took so long for the president to reach his decision.
Yeah, thank you. On why it took so long, it's already answered in that communication the president sent to the National Assembly. He said he had to buy opinions from diverse groups, informed opinions from MDAs, from different interest groups, stakeholders within and outside government. So it's something that will naturally take time. And then, why it took so long, there is a window of 30 days for the president to do that. And he did it just within that time.
Why was this shrouded in so much secrecy, though, the president's final decision? Because it was really difficult to eventually know which way the pendulum had swung. Reaching out to the spokespersons, including yourself, didn't yield much fruit, but it eventually leaked that the president had not had withheld assent on this particular bill.
Yes, you know that at times babble of voices cause confusion. And this was a very, very important piece of legislation. And you needed all the concentration you could get to take the best decision for the country. So the least the president would need during that time was babble of voices that would confuse him. He was buying opinions from stakeholders, and he needed to be able to discern the opinions they have given him and arrive at an informed position.
The president has always spoken about his desire to leave a legacy of free and fair elections. But every time the Electoral Act has reached his table, there's been one excuse or another why the president has refused to put pen to paper. Do you think that he himself has sufficiently engaged with lawmakers on the sort of bill that he would like to, see passed into law in terms of an electoral act, which he believes will be able to give Nigerians, the kind of legacy which he intends to leave with regards to elections?
Yeah, the fact that he refused to assent to those pieces of legislation could also mean that he believed it was the best way to live a free and fair process. Because signing those laws may end up injuring our democratic process. And he said so in that letter, that it was anti-democratic. It would be anti-democratic to sign it. So,
what was anti-democratic about the bills passed, which we saw that was very contentious between the houses, nearly causing a division, a bill which saw the Senate reverse itself, to grant, it would seem, the desire of Nigerians, that's what they believe they've done, before it eventually went to the president's table. What was anti-democratic about it?
Oh, well, the president said, particularly on direct primaries, that it was contrary to free will, freedom of expression, which is very important in a democracy. So, all the reasons, economic, political, legal, security, have been advanced in that communication.
Whose free will, if we may ask?
Democracy is about the people. It's about the largest number of people. If you have a small clique wanting something, and that thing was not going to be in the interest of the larger majority, of course, a Democrat like the president will then go for the interest of the larger majority.
Okay, so there have been talks about, I don't know whether you've seen the different reactions that have come up as a result of the president's non-assent. There are those who believe that this is just an attempt to pull a wool over the eyes of Nigerians, that the real bone of contention is not the direct primaries as we have been made to believe, but the transmission of results, which was one of the things that tore the House of Representatives and even the Senate. We saw how contentious that was in the National Assembly, that is the real reason, that is going to hurt the chances of the APC in the 2023 elections, and they believe that that's why the president hasn't put pen to paper.
That would just be a matter of conjecture, because in that communication, read it line by line, word for word, you didn't see anything about electronic transmission of results. Not a single word, not a sentence on that in that communication. So it will only be the conjecture of certain people. The president didn't say that was any reason why he didn't sign. Rather, it was anchored on the mode of primaries.
Well, talking about the president's engagement, the letter did speak of engaging with MDAs. I'm trying to see if I can get the letter itself now. It says, the Right Honourable Speaker may wish to note that the nomination of party candidates solely via direct primaries as envisaged by the Electoral Act Amendment Bill 2021 has serious adverse legal, financial, economic and security consequences which cannot be accommodated at the moment, considering our nation's peculiarities. First, I'd like to know what are some of the serious adverse legal, financial and economic and security consequences which the president is talking about?
They were also explained. Talking of legal first, he said that there will be the chances of series of litigations arising after direct primaries to elect candidates. And if you have that plethora of legal cases, it will distract from the process. And then he talked about the cost to the parties, the cost to INEC itself. There are over 8,890-something words, about 9,000 words. INEC will have to monitor direct primaries in each of those wards. The parties will have to fund direct primaries in each of those wards. The president said the cost was going to be too humongous, not only for government, but also for the political parties. And it will be undemocratic in the sense that only the big parties will then be able to do anything. The smaller ones are immediately holding the shorter end of the stick. And for multi-party democracy, that would not be good.
Well, he did say that he had received, excuse me, informed advice from relevant ministries, departments, and agencies of the government. But for a number of people, they believe that the most relevant of all of the parastatals of government, which needed consultation with, was INEC. And we understood that the president did write to INEC.
Sure.
We understand also that INEC wrote back to the president to say that they were okay with the Electoral Act as passed by the National Assembly, and they were good to go.
Well, unless you are privy to the content of INEC's communication with the president, as far as I'm concerned, that is not in the public domain. I'm not saying that that was not what they wrote, but we need to be sure. We need to see that communication.
You are the president's spokesperson.
Which I'm sure you have not seen.
You are the president's spokesperson. I mean, if at the end of the day, the communication to the National Assembly was out even before it was read on the floor of the National Assembly, then we can take it for granted that what we saw in the media about the communication with INEC, we can take it to the bank.
No, let's learn not to take anything for granted, because it depends on who is beating the drum on a particular issue. Well, whoever is beating the drum knows how to manipulate the psyche of the public using the media. So don't take anything for granted until you see in cold print that this is what INEC wrote. I do not say that's not what INEC wrote, but when we see it, we are then sure.
Well, so far, in the media's engagement, at least we've had calls also to speak with INEC. We've had calls to ask them questions as to what their reservations will be about the bill as it was passed. They haven't quite expressed any. Okay. So if that is the situation, we have to ask which other ministries, departments, and agencies
even if
was the
INEC
president
didn't
taking on board
express any,
in reaching this decision?
INEC would just be one of the stakeholders. There are many stakeholders in this. INEC would just be one of them. So the opinion of INEC or the position of INEC would then not be cast in concrete. It would just be one of the opinions and one of the things the president considered. There were many, many more other stakeholders to also consider their opinions.
Let's quickly flip this now to Lagos, because I understand my colleague Ayo has questions for you.
Thank you, Malkwe. Mr. Adesina, one of the opinions making the rounds, which I'm sure you may be aware of, is that of the governor of Rivers State, who said, and I quote, "Mr. President signed the petroleum industry bill and sent it back for an amendment of the bill. If Mr. President means well for this country, and as he has promised Nigerians that he wants to conduct free and fair elections, then nothing stops Mr. President from assenting to this amendment and then seek an amendment of those clauses that he questioned." What's your take on that?
Well, the opinion of Governor Wike will just be one out of the opinions of 36 state governors. You have been scrolling since yesterday the opinion of Governor Samuel Otom of Benue State. If there is a governor that is very critical of the president, it's Governor Samuel Otom. But on this one, he's commending the president. So if Governor Wike has one opinion, well, Governor Otom also has another opinion. And also yesterday on your channel here, we saw Governor Kayode Fayemi, who also is supporting the president. Therefore, the opinion of one governor cannot be said to be the opinion. It's just an opinion, and he has a right to it.
But then the issue in contention is that the president signed the petroleum industry bill, then sent an amendment with the response. People expect also, a good number of people said the same thing, even some CSOs said the same thing on this program yesterday, that what if the president signed, then appended another bill to it, asking for those amendments?
Well, it's one of the ways it could have been done. But like they say, there are different ways to kill a snake. And the president has chosen to do it this way. It's not the end of the matter. The National Assembly will look at the matter again, and if necessary, they will consult with the president, they will dialogue. But this is not the end of the matter. The matter will still proceed.
And one of the opinions in public domain, Mr. Adesina, is that this was an opportunity for the president to put up that legacy, at least initiate the process of that legacy that he promised in our electoral system. That this, not signing it, is a major disappointment on the part of many.
No, it depends on who is expressing that opinion of disappointment or otherwise. In terms of the president establishing a legacy, that legacy is established already. It's just a matter of consolidating. Since 2015, you have seen that one election has been better than the other, simply because the president has insisted on being a Democrat. What did we used to see in this country? The party in government won all elections, whether federal or state or legislative or local government, they won all elections. That has not been the situation since 2015, because the president will refuse to tamper with the process. So the legacy is already built. It's just a matter of consolidating it. It will not affect that legacy in one way or the other.
And Mr. Adesina, you also know that due to the electoral system that we have had a situation where voter apathy has consistently and continually declined. So one wonders then how strong the legacy is if voter apathy continues to decline. Voter apathy continues to increase.
It's not peculiar to Nigeria. It's not peculiar to Nigeria. I think it was Chile that held elections recently, and voter apathy was a big issue. There was another country that held election. Voter apathy was a big issue. It's an issue generally in different parts of the world. So it will not be something peculiar to Nigeria. And if there is voter apathy, it is not, you can't source that to the office of the president. It's a general issue that needs to be addressed by the political parties, by maybe our National Orientation Agency. Every agency that can ginger and spur the people must be involved in ensuring that voter apathy gets redressed.
Well, a number of people felt that one of the ways to address voter apathy is to entrench direct participation. We've seen the abuse of how indirect primaries have been handled in most political parties. And oftentimes, I'm sure that it would seem that this bill was also a battle of sorts. We cannot ignore that fact. It was a battle of sorts between the governors and the legislators, who seem to have held the short end of the stick for a very long time. Would you say that by this decision, the president has taken the side of the governors?
No, I'll say the president has taken the side of democracy. He has taken the side of democracy. It's not, he is not interested in taking sides in the tussle, as it were, between governors and the legislators. The president has taken the side of democracy, and he has explained it copiously why he would not side. It was anti-democratic, it had security implications, it has legal implications, and all those reasons. I think those reasons are quite genuine.
It's interesting that the president has all of this to say about the process, but you know, a number of people believe that when he was going to be the presidential candidate of the APC, there was a reason why the party opted for direct primaries when he was to emerge. How come is it then that all of a sudden, you know, the entrenchment of direct primaries as the freest way to throw up a candidate is now anti-democratic?
He said it that it will be anti-democratic to foist it on all political parties. And he emphasized that let parties do as they wish, let them do what they think is in their best interest. So if APC used direct primaries in 2019, that was the choice of the party. But then should it be foisted on other political parties? The answer is no. I think the position of the president now, which is let parties pick whatever suits them, whatever is fine by them, is the most democratic.
Now you say that you say surely this is not the end, but how it's going to end, we are not certain, because what we see now is that in the Senate, this has not gone down well, this has not been received well. They know that they have the powers to override the president's veto. What will happen if that's the decision they decide to take at the end of the day?
Well, there are provisions, checks and balances in the system. The National Assembly can come up with bills, and if the president withholds assent, that is not the end of it. There can still be dialogue, there can still be procedures. Part of it is collecting signatures. It will be lawful, it will be legal. But then, because majority of those lawmakers are also members of the APC, there is also room for consultation, there is room for dialogue between them and the executive. So all the cards are on the table.
Shouldn't that consultation have happened before the president?
It did. You will recall that the Senate president visited, the Speaker of the House of Representatives visited. Like the president said in the letter, he engaged in consultations with stakeholders. The consultations have just not ended.
That's what we're saying. So assuming, I mean, if we take it for granted that indeed the president did consult. We saw them in at the president's at the villa a few times. We believe that it was over this particular bill. We also saw the governors as well visiting the villa a few times to also raise their reservations about this bill. So it was seen that the president was being lobbied from all angles.
Not the governors, to the best of my recollection.
Oh,
the
yes,
governors,
we saw a few governors.
Well, coming on individual.
Yes, we saw a few governors go to the villa as well.
To raise issues that concern their state. The governors as a body, I don't recall, met with the president on this matter of Electoral Act.
Perhaps not as a body, but as individuals, we saw the governors in the villa a few times. And
the governors will always come to the villa.
The assumptions, yes, I mean, we cannot rule out the fact that we don't know, we're not privy to all the details of their meeting, but we cannot rule out, if we're not privy to the details of the meeting of members of the National Assembly and the President, we're not privy to the meetings of the President with the governors as well. We cannot rule out the fact that he must have had conversations with regards to this bill, given how strongly they feel about it. I mean, the only people who have come out so far to commend the President are the governors on this decision. So if the National Assembly decides that they do not need the President's signature anymore, that they're going to go the full hog and pass the bill as they have the powers to, how will that resound with the executive arm of government?
Well, what I would like to say is whether the governors met the president as a body or not, governors are stakeholders in this issue. And if the president consulted widely, he would consult with the governors. So they didn't have to come as a body. He could always speak with them individually. And I'm sure he spoke with a good number of them. Now, if the National Assembly decides to override the president's non-assent to the bill, it will be part of our loss. But then, don't forget that majority of these lawmakers belong to the governing party, the APC. So it's not going to just be something done with a sledgehammer. There will be further consultations. And at the end of those consultations, I'm sure good sense will prevail on both sides and something acceptable to the larger majority will come out.
Well, we'll certainly wait to see what will happen in the coming days. You've heard Mr. Additional say that this is not the end of it, that he believes that there will be further consultation because majority of members in the National Assembly are members of the APC. But we'll wait to see how that eventually pans out in the National Assembly and also in the executive arm of government. But we have to thank you so much for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning. Mr. Femi Additional, a special advisor to the President on media and publicity. Thank you once again.
My pleasure.
We take a break at this moment and we'll continue this conversation for other perspectives. Please stay with us.
Following the position taken by governors on the issue of direct primaries, which was made compulsory by the National Assembly, and the decision of the President to withhold his assent to the Electoral Act Amendment Bill, lawmakers are dissatisfied. They insist that direct primaries will loosen the hold and control of governors on political parties. In reacting to the refusal of the President to assent to the Electoral Act Amendment Bill, members of the Senate are considering overriding President Buhari.
Why will Mr. President say he doesn't want direct primary? The country is not its own limited liability company. This is a country, and this is a chamber. So the Senate ought to override him. By the law, we have the power to override him. That was what Section 58, 4 and 5 said. So if the Constitution gives us the provision to do so, we use our powers to do it.
So we're seeing people compiling signatures inside the Senate chamber.
Yes. We've got more than 73% required to override the veto.
Does it cross across party lines?
Yes, every person.
I felt the National Assembly, which I am part of it, sent him a bill, which I participated in the drafting, going through the first reading, second reading, third reading of that same bill. So I feel that it's wrong, very wrong. Thank you.
Meanwhile, lawmakers in the House of Representatives do not appear to be considering the option of overriding the President as they await the direction of the House leadership.
Whether we say direct primary or indirect primary, it doesn't count. What counts is how best can a candidate emerge. And the electorate will say, this is the person we want.
You see, the speech of the Speaker said that we should make sure that we leave everything until when we come back. By the time we come back, today is the last day of our plenary. So by the time we come back, at least we'll be able to know. But we have the chance, and at the same time, as a legislator, you can override certain. When we come back, I think we know what to do.
Nigerians also await the final action from lawmakers following agitations that direct primary system would improve participation in internal party politics.
Well, the conversation does continue indeed, and we're now being joined by Samson Itodo, who is the Executive Director of Yaga Africa. We also have a few guests who are going to be joining us virtually. I'm sure that when they're ready, we'll certainly introduce them as we go along in this. Oh, yes, they are ready already. We have Professor Wahab Egbewole, who is a senior advocate of Nigeria. He joins us via Zoom from Ilorin, and we also have Dr. Ngozi Wogugu, who is an associate professor of political science, Head Department of Political Science and Public Administration, Babcock University in Ogun State. Gentlemen, you're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you very much.
Good morning. Well, Samson, let me start with you. I don't know if this came as a surprise for you, the president withholding his assent to this Electoral Act amendment bill. Did it hit you as a surprise?
Well, it hit me and also the civil society community as a surprise for three reasons. First, here is a president who committed to assenting to a legislation that enjoys popular support from Nigerians. Secondly, this process enjoyed, the engagement and the participation, the full participation of the Ministry of Justice. And so we thought that, all the gray areas were addressed before the bill was transmitted to the president for assent. And lastly, was just that sense of urgency, because we're actually in a national election emergency. You'd expect that, given the context that we have, the president would accelerate his assent. But it's disappointing that for a fifth record time under his administration, he's declining assent to the electoral bill. And it does put to question his commitment to bequeathing to Nigerians an electoral law that guarantees the independence of democratic institutions, the participation of citizens, as well as the integrity of the vote. It's so sad that he has declined assent, and some of the reasons that he gave are quite inexcusable. And we just hope that the National Assembly, as civil society has demanded, to either override the president or review the contentious provision and transmit the bill back to the president to assent to the bill, because his decline has grave implications, and it will adversely affect the upcoming elections, both at the FCT in Osun as well as the Ekiti governorship election and the 2023 elections. Now, we're just 425 days to the 2023 elections. If you look at the review timelines in the electoral bill, party primaries, in fact, in February, INEC is supposed to issue notice of elections. That's 360 days before the election. So you have early activities that will be conducted in the build-up to 2023. If at December, and this, like the National Assembly said, they'll reopen this discussion in January. If by January, when January 4th is the commencement date for party primaries for Ekiti, what we have is some uncertainty that should have been avoided. And we're just back to the 2018 scenario where there was uncertainty with the legal framework. It impacted on INEC's preparations because the guidelines and the manuals devolved from the electoral bill. And so we are currently in a very difficult situation, and this was avoidable. All the president would have done was to assent to the bill and then send an amendment bill, to the National Assembly for consideration. That way, it gives INEC and stakeholders the opportunity to test some of the innovations that have been introduced in the current electoral bill.
You don't really need the bill to test that, because some people will say that Anambra has already happened and the BVAS was implemented, was experimented with, and they didn't need the Electoral Act to do that, did they? No,
they need the Electoral Act, because if you look at the position of the law as such today, first, if you look at in Wike and Peter side, if you look at the Akwa Ibom, Udoma and Umana, the Supreme Court has held that you cannot supplant, the voters register with the list of accredited voters in an election. And what the National Assembly did, in fact, their lordships actually advised the National Assembly and INEC to review the provisions of the Electoral Act that legitimizes electronic accreditation of voters. And in furtherance of that directive or call, in the current bill, electronic accreditation of voters was legitimized. Because if INEC proceeds with deploying the BVAS, and when the debate or the contest is on determining overvoting. The current position of the law is that overvoting will be determined based on the total number of votes versus the total number of registered voters. But the bill has cured that mischief, that the overvoting will be determined based on the total number of votes cast and the total number of accredited voters. If you look at electronic transmission of results, INEC has said they've piloted electronic transmission of results, you know, since the 2011 elections. INEC is currently deploying the IREV, the voter election results viewing portal for viewing results. Now, if the bill had been passed, right, and the president assented to the bill, in the FCT municipal elections, INEC can now deploy electronic transmission of results to test that system before the Ekiti and Osun governorship elections. But what INEC is currently doing does not have the force of law. And that's why it was important and very crucial for the president to have assented to the legislation without these controversies that we're currently experiencing in the polity.
Let's quickly go to our guests who are joining us virtually. Let me ask you, Professor Ngozi, how did this president's refusal to assent to the bill, how did it come to you?
Okay, thank you very much. It is true that the general expectation was that the president would assent to the bill. But given the body language and the advice of the Attorney General, we knew where we were going, that the president was not going to assent to the bill. So it actually didn't come as a surprise to me that the president did not assent to the bill.
Oh, you must forgive me. I lost you for most of that conversation. I could barely hear you. But I'm hoping that our guests at home were able to hear you. Let me ask Professor Egbewale what he made of the president's withholding his assent to the bill.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate this opportunity. The president's prerogative is defined by the law. It is a choice that he had to make, and he made that choice clearly in terms of he had a duty to either assent or decline, and he has chosen to decline. As far as I'm concerned, legally, that is his prerogative. But it doesn't end there. And that is why, that's the beauty of law. The process leading to the passage of this bill clearly shows where the Nigerian populace reside. And if the president of Nigeria decides that, oh, as far as I'm concerned, National Assembly has done its own, I am doing my own. It is his legal right to do. It is also the right of the National Assembly to take further steps if they so decide. So for me, the president's right has been exercised. The National Assembly has a right to exercise its own right, and the Nigerian people also have a right to exercise their right.
Well, there'll be questions as to what the right of the Nigerian people is on this one, at least at this stage where it currently stands. But the question is, reading the president's reasons, which he gave for not assenting to the bill, what do you make of it?
Lawmaking is a process, and all the issues. And it's important that the president, even in his letter, said, at the moment. So in my view, I think the president appreciates the fact that that decision may still be changed. And the right of Nigerians now, in my view, is as the electorate that gave their mandate to the National Assembly can then mandate them at their individual constituencies. Because ordinarily, before the law was passed in the first place, there should have been consultations by every member of the National Assembly at the various constituencies. And if the constituencies are giving them the mandate, go and pass that bill, it is only reasonable that the president respects that position. And that is what I'm talking about with regards to the right of the Nigerian people. Go back to the constituencies and let them revalidate whatever mandate they have given. Oh, the president has declined assent, therefore leave it at that. The president has declined assent, no, don't allow that to stay. That's the right of Nigeria.
Okay. Well, we'll wait to see how that right is expressed, but we'll also be taking more opinions when we come back from this break. Please stay with us.
Thanks for staying with us. Let me begin this part with Mr. Itodo in our Abuja studio. Well, something you said earlier struck me, and I don't know if you want to throw some more light on it. You said that in the process of making the bill into what it became before being sent to the president, the Ministry of Justice, and I assume that's the Federal Ministry of Justice, participated fully in the process, and it's also from the same Ministry of Justice, the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, that the President sought counsel before signing before he would make up his mind whether or not to sign the bill into law. And of course, we all know what came from the Attorney General's desk. So I'm just wondering, was there a disconnect somewhere? Is there some hypocrisy, or is it just sheer politics?
I think your last point explains it. What we're experiencing is what we call in public policy parlance, policy capture. There are partisan political interests that have captured this entire process and want to shift the content of this bill away from advancing public interest to focused on advancing partisan and individual interests of the people. The Ministry of Justice was part of this, and we have said this repeatedly, that the difference between this amendment process undertaken by the 9th National Assembly and the previous efforts both in the 7th and the 8th National Assembly was the joint and collaborative approach that the leadership of both committees in the Senate and the House of Reps adopted. You recall, there were technical committees that were constituted by the National Assembly that comprised of the Ministry of Justice and the Attorney General, the Senate, the House, civil society, and INEC. And the INEC chairman and top leadership of INEC, they were all part of several retreats and meetings that was conducted. So it raises question as to, first, even the integrity and the sincerity of purpose in the participation in this entire process. And what you have seen is just a deviation, from public interest just to advance, partisan political interest. And it's unfortunate. And when I read the reports on where the Attorney General stands and his advice to the President, it's just sheer politics. And I had hoped that, as public leaders, they will, prioritize what's the interest of our electoral process. They would recognize that we are in an emergency situation and the electoral law needs to be finalized, because we cannot conduct subsequent elections with the current electoral law that we have. It's not only obsolete, but it will not guarantee the integrity, of subsequent elections. So we thought that that would be the overriding and perhaps the top interest and priorities of our political leaders. But it's clear that they're not really interested in reforming the process based on this action. And we hope and urge them that within the next 30 days, this process should be completed. If it's not concluded, then it's going to jeopardize the integrity of the Ekiti Osun as well as the 2023 elections?
Well, so many things to unpack in that letter of Mr. President, but let me take it to some of our other guests. Well, Professor Igbole, we picked up like at least six points, 6 reasons adduced by the president for not assenting to that. And I'm just wondering what for you would be the far-reaching implications. Take, for instance, the part where he talked about existing party constitutions, and I'm sure that will come on screen shortly. So I'm wondering, for instance, he said that the proposed amendment cannot work in retrospect, given that the existing constitution of the parties already registered with INEC permit direct, indirect, and consensus primaries. So the question that came to me from that is, which one should really take preeminence? Which one should kowtow to which? The law of the country or the constitution of the political parties?
Thank you. It's obvious that from what Samson said, that politics overrode policy. And for me, priority of laws had already been settled since 1981 or thereabout in Balogun's case, that it starts from the constitution, the statute. In fact, the party constitution has no place at all.
Well, Prof, if you don't mind, just 1 second. If your speaker is on, could you turn down the volume of the speaker from your side so that we can hear you distinctly? Please go ahead.
Sorry. The point I was making, I hope I'm a bit clearer now.
Well, you're a bit clearer now. Go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. The point I was making was that party politics has no business in, a party constitution has no place in the hierarchy of laws in Nigeria. And the essence of the Electoral Act is to actually override the totality of such a decision. I'm sorry. I hope you are hearing me.
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay. So the party constitution has no place in the hierarchy of laws in Nigeria. And the other reasons are, well, as far as the president of Nigeria is concerned, may have information that we do not have. But I'm looking at it from purely legal perspective, talking about security. That is why the government is put in place in the first place. 2, talking about legal. What's legal?
We'll come to those other reasons, Prof. I just wanted to take that point from you about whether or not the constitutions of each of the political parties, which already has the provision, which lines up with the provisions of the current Electoral Act of direct and indirect primaries, should take precedence over the nation adjusting or not its own electoral law. Let me ask the same question of Associate Professor Ngozi Nwokwu. What's your take on that? Do you agree that the party constitution should adjust to the Electoral Act or the other way around?
Okay, thank you very much, Ayo. I agree that it should be the party constitution that should be adjusted to meet with the extant laws of the land. The electoral law is the umbrella law for conducting elections in Nigeria. So parties should now make their constitutions to comply with the provisions of the electoral law. So I think it is abnormal to decline assent on the basis of the provisions of the constitutions of the political parties. It would have been better to make amendment to the electoral law. Then the political parties will now have to meet and amend their constitutions to meet up with the new provisions that are in the Electoral Act. That should have been the best thing to do.
That consideration was not made by the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation or the people that the president said he consulted with?
Okay, like Samson said, we see a lot of politics playing out in this whole process. Okay, it's not as if people don't know what should be in the national interest, but people are also looking at what will play out going forward to the next elections, which one will be in their best interest or not. So the president consulted widely, as we had Femi Adesina say, and the advice that people gave will be based on their personal idiosyncrasies and the interest that they have. So when you look at it, sometimes it's not just the interest of the people that everybody is looking at. Some people are thinking at what is in it for them. What will happen when they are in position to emerge as candidates of the party? Which one will be more favorable for them? So those things are the things that play out, both in the part of the advice that is given by the Attorney General or those that the President consulted.
But then, for you, my sincere apologies, what then does that say to you of the process of lawmaking if more than 400, almost 500 lawmakers sat down, held public hearings, and had, of course, themselves wide consultations far and wide across all levels of political divides, considerations and all, perhaps the same quality, caliber of or groups of people that the president consulted with, and they all came to the different positions that they've come to. What then does that say to you of that process of lawmaking?
Okay, it's not just, it's the dynamics of the process, actually. Now, the thing is this: if this thing were to play out the way everybody wanted it to play out, the next thing would have been for the National Assembly to go back and override the president's assent and pass the law to give credence to that idea of wide consultations. But we know it's not going to happen. You know, Mr. Femi Adesina also alluded to that. There will be party consultations and all that. The process is, as it is, it's facilitated by human actors, and several things play out within that process. So there is no process that is perfect, actually. People will change ground, okay? And you know, the other angle to it is that this thing is the position that is favorable to the legislators on one hand, and the position that is favorable to the governors. That's what's in the public domain, as per who controls the political parties and emergence of candidates. So if it is favorable for the legislators, they will come out with it, okay? In this case, that's what it's doing. But in the end, it's not going to go the long haul where you have the legislators overriding the president. We can know that there will be consultations. Hopefully, there will be some adjustments, and then by the National Assembly, and the bill will never be assented to by the president. They just hope that plays out very quickly enough. It's not too bad for our system, but when you also look back, you ask yourself, the legislators, do they usually consult with the constituents in the processes of amendment of laws and all that? Because there are some other provisions in this electoral bill that are not being debated now that are contentious. Why everybody is debating this is because the president gave his reason for not granting assent on the direct primaries. He didn't raise any other issue.
Well, Mr. Itodo, again, as I said, there are so many things to unpack in this. But as I said, let's also take a further look at some of those reasons given by the president. One of them is financial crimes. And let me ask you this, Mr. Itodo. Is this, for you, on the screen, a strong enough or not reason for the president to have dissented his signature, disagreed to sign it? Is this financial crimes issue a reason or not, in your own opinion? Because, I mean, you know, we've been talking about vote buying and all of that for quite a long time. And according to the president, this could make matters only worse, over monetization of the process.
You know, it's interesting to hear the president actually allude to this menace that's bedeviled our electoral process for quite a long time. And you're very aware, and we've had this discussion vote buying, and it's interesting to see the president flagging this. The current political process is already commercialized. I don't consider this, excuse me, I don't consider this a very strong reason for declining assent. In any case, the response would have been, you know, to say, how do we limit the impact of money politics in our electoral process, is to look at campaign spending. So if his concern was around monetization, then I think the discourse should be, how do we implement campaign spending limits imposed in our electoral law? How do we ensure that parties are restrained from pegging high cost of nomination fees and sundry fees paid by political or aspirants? Those are ways that you decommercialize the process. How do you also, you know, reduce this parasite of office that is the major attraction for political office by politicians? So there are other ways. So I don't see this as a cogent reason for declining assent to the legislation. In any case, it's the political class, the political actors that compromise, you know, the integrity of the process, weaponize poverty, and try to buy votes from citizens, and also try to secure party nomination at all costs. We know for sure what happens during party primaries, and whether direct or indirect, these processes are still prone to manipulation, where hegemons within political parties would deploy huge resources to compromise the choice that either party members or voters at those primaries will make in the course of candidate nomination. So it's not a cogent reason. If the president is concerned about financial crimes, if he's concerned about vote buying, he would have championed this from the 2019 general elections. And part of the inputs that they would have made in the review process is to see how we strengthen our campaign spending regulations, or even prevail on the EFCC and ICPC. These two agencies have been involved in election monitoring or election observation in recent past. The key question is, how many people have been prosecuted for vote buying? How many people have been prosecuted for spending beyond the limits pegged by our laws? And it's on record that even the president's party, the opposition party, they've been complicit in infringing on campaign spending limitations. So I think it's just double standards, and perhaps the president was just shopping for reasons to justify his decline, and I think this is not cogent enough.
Professor Egbowale, what do you think?
I also subscribe to the position that the reason is not too cogent. And my position is informed by the fact that when we are talking about money, there are legitimate spendings in every political process. And the fact that people are coming from their houses to vote in respect of the party primaries is not going to, in my view, increase the spending in any form worse than the indirect primaries position. And I am of this view because the spendings is expected to be for basics and not for vote buying. And secondly, if we talk about monetization, over monetization, it is also the duty of the state to ensure that this law is properly implemented, irrespective of the dynamics that Mr. Etodo had identified. As far as I'm concerned, when we make a law, and especially a law of this magnitude, and the circumstances under which the law was passed in the first place, there is no reason for this tangential rationale that the president had raised in terms of over monetization. Politics is expensive everywhere in the world. Now, the only difference in Nigeria is the vote buying aspect. And of course, that is a crime which the state has a duty to curb by all means. So it has nothing to do with basis for rejecting to assent to a fundamental bill of this nature that will spell doom for our prospective elections.
Reason on security, the reason of security that he gave, that the security agencies themselves could be overstretched if they have to stretch themselves to 8,809 wards all over the nation.
Thank you. I also believe that is neither here nor there, because it is more about 10 times 8,800 and something wards that the general elections are held, and the security still do their best to make provisions for it. Secondly, we also must appreciate the fact that we are talking about party primaries, and they are supposed to be members of a particular party. Expectation is that they are members of the same family, and we are not looking at hoodlums. It is just the peculiarity of our own political process that is informing the president's raking these issues. With due respect to Mr. President, I don't think that I expect that each political party will provide security for its members. And members of the political parties are actually their own security in the different worlds that these party primaries are expected to have taken place. To now use that as, they will be overstretched. No. In my humble view, partisan politics is a voluntary freedom of association. They have decided on their own, I want to belong to a particular party. Therefore, why should they now stretch or stress the security to have their own primaries to elect who they intend to elect? Well, with due respect, I think I have my own reservation for that kind of reasoning.
All right, let me ask Professor Wogugu, given the reasons that you have seen in that letter of Mr. President to the National Assembly, does it in any way question the internal politics of each of these political parties as far as you're concerned?
Okay, thank you very much. It does. It does, really. It's an open knowledge that most of our parties have problems with internal democracy. And part of the reasons that the president has given also speaks to that acknowledgement. Okay, even though those reasons may not be said to be genuine enough to decline assent, but they speak to the way our politics is being run within the party mechanism, within the general system. We have challenges, and that boils down to the fact that our political process is too monetized and is attractive to people, and politics is seen as an easy way to make wealth. So people want to go into it, and they are prepared to do anything to get into public office because they will have direct access to state resources. That's what all this is about. If people were seeing politics as service to the nation, where you go and then you come out poorer than when you went in, then we won't have too many people, we won't have the challenges that we are having. It's just the nature of our political system that is at the root of all these issues that we are having. And that system needs to be completely reformed. That system needs to be completely reformed.
All right, well, just one last one, Mr. Samson Itodo in our Abuja studio. If 24 hours is such a long time in politics, for you, how significant is it that legislators will deliberate on this issue when they resume in January?
I think it's significant. They've got two options. First, is to override the president, and secondly, is to resolve and remove the contentious clause. But they have to do so within the next 30 days, because as I mentioned earlier, we are in a national election emergency. With this law, this process needs to be concluded to ensure early preparations for the 2023 election. So I expect that upon resumption, that should be the first issue that will be considered. If they take the route of overriding the president, which I think they should, then they should do that on the day they resume. If they take the route of reviewing the provision, it doesn't take anything. It's just, amending that particular clause, and they pass it and transmit same to the president. And the president should, assent to the bill in 1 week. This is in the interest of our democracy, and anything short of this will be a repudiation of national interest.
Okay. Samson Itodo, Executive Director, IAGA Africa. Ngozi Nwogbogu, Associate Professor of Political Science, as well as Professor Wahab Igbewale, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being a part of our program this morning.
Thank you for having us.
All right.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah. Still on the matter, another perspective, same issue, when we return. To stay with us.
This is the final interaction between the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, and the Senate Appropriations Committee before the passage of the 2022 national budget. The committee has invited INEC chairman to table before it the commission's projected expenditure for the 2023 general elections for the purpose of capturing it in the 2022 budget, billed for passage by both chambers of the National Assembly on Tuesday, December 21st. INEC chairman presents the sum of 305 billion naira as projected expenditure for the 2023 general elections.
But for the 2023 general election, as I said, we made a submission on the basis of the 100 billion as one line item, plus the 40 billion for regular budget in the 2022 appropriation bill, and then there is the outstanding 205. What we have done is to look at activities that we need to conduct before the general election.
Professor Yakubu also gives an update on the controversial Ekiti East by-election, which has been plagued by violence during 4 unsuccessful attempts.
But as we are aware, the by-election was disrupted by sheer act of violence. Voters were killed on the queue on election day. A police officer was killed at a polling unit on election day. We simply suspended the election indefinitely because this INEC will never reward bad behavior. With Ekiti governorship election coming up in June, Ekiti East one state constituency may be a dress rehearsal for the Ekiti governorship election. So we may end up conducting the election in that constituency 5 times because it may be disrupted. Now the thinking of the commission at present is that since the Ekiti governorship election is holding in June, we should just wait and combine the state constituency and the governorship election in June, instead of going twice.
Meanwhile, there is no word yet on the status of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill presently before President Buhari for assent. The 30 days deadline stipulated by the Constitution for the President to respond to the bill expired on December 19th. President Buhari is expected to either assent to the bill or write to the National Assembly explaining his decision to withhold assent. Linda Kibe, Channels Television News.
Indeed, the budget, yes, the 305 billion naira budget requested by the INEC chairman for the elections, the upcoming general elections, and as well as a few other elections which will be coming up in different parts of the country, is the subject of our discussion this morning. Let me introduce the guests first. We have with us this morning Mr. Festus Oke, who is a National Commissioner at INEC. He's also the Chairman, Information and Voter Education. You're welcome to our studios this morning.
Yeah, good morning.
I cannot but ask first, though, how much of a setback is this President's refusal to assent to the Electoral Act as amended?
We've made it very clear severally that there are very progressive innovations in the bill that was forwarded to the President for assent, and that it will be to the glory of the electoral process and the joy of Nigerians if some of those amendments come into play during the 2023 elections. But as you know, the Commission is a federal executive body. The power of legislation resides with the National Assembly, and the power of assent resides with the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So our hope is that whatever challenges there are in terms of some of the provisions in the amended bill, it should be resolved quickly, so that the Commission can plan appropriately. As you are aware, the guidelines and the regulations and the manuals of the Commission are derived from the provisions of the Electoral Act. So as of today, we operate on the basis of the extant law, on the basis of the existing electoral legal framework. So if there's an amendment too close to the election, it creates its own challenges, creates its own dynamics, and also creates its own problems. So we will prefer a situation where some of these issues will be resolved quickly. Very unfortunately, the issue of direct primaries has completely overshadowed every other thing that has been provided in the electoral amendment bill, and this is very, very unfortunate. This is because if you look at the bill, you will see that provision has been made for the early release of funds to the Commission. You will also see that there has been provision relating to the electoral transmission and collation of results. You will also see that there has been an amendment of the law allowing the Independent National Electoral Commission to review election results that have been declared fraudulently. The bill also provides for a situation where only the Federal High Court will adjudicate on pre-election matters. So there are very progressive provisions in the amended bill. Unfortunately, as I said, the issue of direct or indirect primaries has overshadowed every other issue relating to the bill.
So this is certainly a setback for INEC.
Well, it's not a setback for INEC, but I believe that the Nigerian people need to clear some of these issues in the electoral legal framework. So much work went into the making of this particular bill because the INEC, the Senate Committee on INEC and the House Committee on Electoral Matters constituted a technical committee. The Commission was part of that technical committee. The Federal Ministry of Justice was part of that technical committee. Some civil society groups and organizations were part of the technical committee. And even during the technical committee, both houses gave me the privilege of chairing the technical committee. So I understand the quantum of work that went into the making of this particular bill. But we are hopeful that the issues involved, since what the issue involved is a one-line item, will be resolved quickly, and then we should have a new electoral legal framework. But as of today, the Commission is preparing on the basis of the existing electoral legal framework.
Let's go to what the INEC chairman who appeared before the House Committee to ask for, 305 billion naira. That has taken a lot of Nigerians by surprise, because it would seem that increasingly every year our budget to conduct elections seems to be rising at an astronomical rate. How does INEC intend to justify this expenditure to Nigerians?
Well, I think the issues are very, very clear. The first was that there was a provision of 140 billion to the Appropriations Committee from the executive. As I pointed out, INEC is a federal executive body. Now, out of that 140 billion, 40 billion was for our regular budget, which keeps on decreasing almost on a yearly basis. So the first 100 billion, we classified it as the first tranche for our 2023 general election. Now, as you are aware, we are going to conduct the Ekiti and Osun governorship elections in June and July. So that 100 billion is, we are going to take the money for the conduct of the Ekiti and Osun governorship elections from there. Secondly, as you are aware, the Commission is introducing a new technology in the electoral process, and it is a multifunctional technology that will take care of issue of voter registration, issue of accreditation of voters, and issue of uploading or transmission of election results. So we are going to acquire this new technology afresh. As you heard the chairman say, we have retired the smart card reader because it's no longer serving us the way we want. So this new technology has to be acquired, and our projection is that since we now have a total of 176,846 polling units, we need at least 200,000 beavers for the purposes of this election, and we have to make provision for these things early enough, place orders for them, and then bring them in, and it will take a lot of money to acquire this technology. But what is important is that the moment you acquire these beavers, it serves, you don't have to worry about voters registration anymore. You don't have to worry about acquiring a new accreditation device. You don't have to worry about acquiring a new device for the transmission of election results, and it may last the country for 2 or 3 electoral cycles before you have a much more modern technology. So it will take a lot of money, but I think that it's a one-off thing, and the moment we do this, next time you will see it in the budget.
How much of this is really a one-off? How much of the 305 billion naira is really a one-off?
Well, there are some peripherals that we need to acquire. Now, you see, we've categorized the budget into 3 phases: the pre-election phase, the election phase, and the post-election phase. During this particular election, pre-election phase, one, we have to monitor the conventions and primaries and congresses of political parties. We are conducting continuous voters registration exercise, and this thing will go on for over a year, and we have to accelerate that. We have to also prepare for the election. We have to renovate some of our offices, our 774 local government offices. Some of them are in complete disrepair. We have to also, and as you are aware, some of our offices were burnt during very difficult circumstances, during the NSAS period, during the by unknown gunmen, and also through sheer acts of brigandage. So we have to do all these things. And then there are so many other activities we have to undertake now. As we are also aware, this commission provides generating cells for our registration area centers. We provide GP tanks for our registration area centers. So there are so many things that we need to put in place before the elections. And then during the elections, we have to print ballot papers to currency standards, pre-result sheets with all sorts of security features, store these things in the central bank. And central bank is not a charity organization. We have to pay for warehousing and storage. So there are so many things we need to do before, during, and after elections.
So the cost of our elections is this high because of, I mean, the fact that it's been very difficult to conduct, how will I put it now? I mean, to just rely on people being sincere is as a result of, I don't want to say our dishonesty, but lack of sincerity in terms of, you know, how we conduct ourselves whenever elections are close by. Is that correct?
Well, it's part of it. In some countries, and I need to be very honest with you, in some countries, presiding officers come to the polling units in the morning from their houses, and they come with the ballot boxes, come with the result sheets, come with the ballot papers. And at the end of the day, when elections are over, they pack up and then they go to the collation center. Nobody even accompanies them because of the trust in the electoral process, because of the trust in the system. But here, we have to keep on hiding. The moment these ballot papers arrive the country, they have to go straight to the central bank, where they will be stored until 2 or 3 days, and then we carry all the representatives of the political parties to the central bank, then go and show them the result sheets and the ballot papers as they arrived. They have to take the serial number of everything that we have provided before these things are moved to the various local governments and then moved to the various registration area centers before they go to the polling units on election day. So it's a problem.
It's a pretty tedious process.
It is a very, very tedious process.
But
yes.
Some of the things that you've just said is that when it arrives from outside of the country, why are we printing ballot papers outside of Nigeria?
We don't print all ballot papers outside Nigeria. Sometimes when you have a presidential election, the sheer volume of things to be printed is so much that I do not think that any of the security printers in Nigeria can handle that sheer volume. Not only that, the trust deficit in the electoral process makes it imperative for us to keep on hiding. And I use the word, for us to keep on hiding. The security features have to be different. The color coding for each local government has to be different, and so on and so forth. And we don't want a situation where we give out a contract for the printing of ballot papers and resources, and some political interests will be moving from one security printer to the other within the country, trying to find out where we are printing some of these ballot papers and resources, and then use some rogue elements within some of these companies in order to compromise the quality of our resources, or to compromise the secrecy of the color coding, and so on and so forth. So it's still it still boils down to the trust issue in our electoral process. So some of the ballot papers and resources are printed in the country, depending on the type of election, depending on the sensitivity of the election involved, and also depending on the quantum of things to be printed. So if we have small by-election, for instance, in just North Basa Federal Constituency, there's a high possibility that the ballot papers and the resources will be printed by one of the security printers within the country, in which case the Commission has the capacity to police and monitor the printing to make sure that nothing goes wrong in terms of the color coding of the ballot papers and the resources, and also in terms of the security features that are normally embedded within these documents.
Shouldn't we then be looking to increase the capacity of our security and printing companies?
Well, it's an issue of the level of infrastructure within the country, and some of these security printers are also private ventures. Yes, we have our own national security printing company, but there's a limit to what they can do, because they also do some other security printing, and you know, the band within which some of these documents are printed is very narrow. You cannot print all the ballot papers and resources for a presidential election and keep them for maybe 2-3 months. It doesn't make sense, because the implication is that you are going to keep these things in the central bank for a very, very long time. So I believe that as our level of technology increases, as the infrastructural issues in the country appreciates, there's a possibility that we may increasingly begin to print most of our security documents within the country.
So 305 billion naira, you must admit, is a lot of money. Do you admit it's a lot of money?
No, it's a lot of money, definitely,
okay,
yes.
so I'm just wondering what share of that is going to be spent here in Nigeria, because some people will say that is something that could stimulate the printing economy. I mean, that's one. Then two, how do we ensure competitive prices? Because I imagine that a lot of contractors are already looking to make their bids to INEC. How do we know that INEC is not going to be, engaging in a bazaar, but looking for the best prices for the best product at a cost which will ultimately be of value to Nigerians?
Well, if you look at INEC's budget, for instance, you can see that during the 2019 general election, the Commission deployed over 1 million ad hoc staff. And these ad hoc staff have to be, some of them have to be housed. We have to pay for their feeding. We have to pay for their allowances, and we have to pay for their movement. So payment of over 1 million ad hoc staff is much. And I'm talking about a situation, and during a period when we had slightly over 119,000 polling units. Now we have over 176,000 polling units. So that definitely will increase. Secondly, INEC must conform to procurement procedures and procurement processes in relation to some of these items. And it goes through some rigorous processes. Most of the items we use are advertised, and we invite competitive bidding. And then all the procurement procedures and processes are adhered to. So it's not an issue of bazaar. Some of these things we have experience in carrying out some of these issues and some of these processes. So they are not new.
Let's flip this to Lagos and I understand my colleague Ayo has questions for you.
Thank you, Mokwe. Mr. Okoye, the issue of trust that you raised the other time is interesting to me. How significantly would you say that the introduction or inclusion of technology into our electoral process has helped to stem that tide of trust deficiency in our electoral system?
Well, this commission is completely committed to the introduction of technology in the electoral process. And we want to deepen democracy through the use of technology. Now, and I will give you a very practical example. At this point in time, any political party that concludes its party primaries has to submit the list and personal particulars of its nominated candidates electronically. So the implication is that the moment the deadline for the submission of the list and personal particulars of the candidates elapse, we shut down the portal, and no other political party and no other interest can access the portal of the commission. But before this particular period, the time for a submission of the list and personal particulars of candidates is a huge issue within the commission. Sometimes different factions of a particular political party will come and fight in the premises of the commission relating to the having conducted multiple primaries, having conducted factionalized primaries, and so on. So the introduction of technology in the party nomination processes has eased that particular process. So nobody can now come and say, oh, you know, I came before time, my list was not accepted, and so on and so forth. That is one. Secondly, pool agents or party agents, political parties now submit their addresses, their names, and their photographs electronically. So the issue of having ghost party agents or rogue party agents at the polling units has completely been stemmed. The civil society groups and organizations, the media also apply for accreditation now electronically. So we are able to assess some of these things, and it has reduced to the barest minimum what I call pernicious human interference in the electoral process. So it is really, really significant. And as you can see from the Anambra governorship election, the introduction of the BVAS has been the clincher. Now, if you come to the polling unit with a permanent voter's card and you say you are the registered voter, we check the voter's register to see whether your name is there. If we see the name there, then we check your fingerprints. If your fingerprint matches, we give you a ballot paper, you go and vote. If your fingerprint does not match, we now check your facials. If your facial matches, we give you the ballot paper, you go and vote. If it doesn't match, we check the QR code at the back of the permanent voter's card. If he brings out their biometrics and everything and it matches, you go and vote. If it does not match, if these three processes take place and it does not match, the implication is that you are a ghost voter, or you are not the person you claim to be, or you are just engaged in identity theft, and we ask you to go away. So the introduction of technology has to a tremendous extent obviated some of the manual and human elements that we experience. And the moment we accelerate with technology, definitely some of these issues relating to trust in our electoral process will be completely obviated. So we are clear in our minds that we are in the right direction, and that the introduction of technology in the electoral process will help tremendously in bringing trust and credibility to the electoral process.
How has this proposal for 305 billion been received by the National Assembly?
Well, when we went to the National Assembly, the members of the National Assembly made it very, very clear that they are also committed to a credible electoral process, and that they don't want a situation where the issue of funding will become an issue in relation to the electoral process. And also made it very clear to us that the president has also publicly stated that funding will not be a challenge for the conduct of the 2023 elections. So I think that they appreciate what the issues are, they understand what the issues are, and they also understand the fact that our elections have been completely staggered. Either in January or February, we have 8 by-elections to conduct. And then thereafter, in February, on the 12th of February, we conduct the area council elections in the Federal Capital Territory. And then we face Ekiti and Osun governorship elections before we even get to the 2023 general election. So all year round, this commission is conducting elections, and elections are capital intensive. Not only that, let me tell you something. When we prepare for a presidential election, we also prepare for a presidential runoff. In case no candidate scores majority of lawful votes and no candidate gets the mandatory 25% requirement in 2/3 of all the states of the federation. The same thing with governorship elections. We prepare for every governorship election, and we also prepare for a governorship runoff, because the band between the time you do the election itself and the time you do a runoff is just 21 days. Before, it was 7 days. But the National Assembly, in their wisdom, increased it to 21 days, which gives us some able room to engage in reverse logistics and remobilize. So it's a huge venture, and they understand these issues, and they received it well. In fact, the dominant opinion was that if the cash flow is okay, if the country can afford it, if we still need additional resources to make sure that we get the elections right, that the National Assembly will be ready to listen to us.
Well, we'll see how, we sincerely hope that, at the end of the day, the conduct of the elections will justify the humongous amounts of money, being appropriated for them. We have to thank you very much for coming on Sunrise Today this morning. Mr. Festus Okoye is a National Commissioner at INEC and also the Chairman, Information and Voter Education at the same institution. Thank you for coming on Sunrise Daily once more.
I appreciate this opportunity.
Well, it's time to go, but not before we take your mails, or not without us taking your mails. I see this one from Olorunloba Adeni talking about the cost of conducting 2023 polls. You say 305 billion naira to organize the general election. This is too expensive. Not mincing words. If this projected spending was properly probed, you will definitely see anomalies. The president must audit this properly before it is approved.
Well, there are 266 lines, so you want to check each one of them. Henry Okeke on the same issue said, well, this is on Electoral Act Amendment Bill, says, when are we going to grow above personal or group interests in our lawmaking? Each penultimate election year comes with an amendment to the electoral law, thereby creating multiple amended versions of the same electoral act. We need a brand new electoral act that can stand the test of time.
And Festus Akimboyewa says this NAS has been widely criticized and described as a rubber stamp parliament. They now have a golden opportunity to convince Nigerians that they are not a rubber stamp parliament by overriding Mr. President's decision to decline assent to the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. The ball is in their court.
Taiwo says on the same issue, all of them are fighting for their own personal interests, senators, reps, and the governors.
And Famous Timilehin says there shouldn't be any disputes between party rules versus country laws. Laws are made for man, not man made for laws. The political parties were set up and derived their powers from the Constitution. So if there are any amendments in the Constitution, the political parties should follow suit. There shouldn't be any issues about what the law says regarding political parties' affairs. Okay, I'm a little lost, but I guess his point has been carried. That's where we'll have to wrap it up for your feedback and the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Mao Yusuf.
And I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a wonderful day and stay alive.